Continuing our study of Tefillin. The Gemara in Shabbos Daf Yud Beis. Omar Rabba Bar Huna Chayav Adam Lemashmesh B'Tefillin Kol Shah V'Shah. He should connect himself to the Tefillin. There are many different minhagim. Some will do it on their own. Others will have it set at certain points in the Tefillah. They start with the Shal Yad and then the Shal Rosh. Some kiss it with the Ritzuos. And Kalvachom Mitzitz. Matzit she'ein bo el eskor achas. Amr Torah v'hoya al mitzchot tamid. Shelo yasiach daito bimenu. Tefillin sheyesh bo askoras harbe. If I'm not mistaken, 21 times 2 is 42, I think. Alachas kam v'kam. So we have here an Iser Hesech Hadas, and therefore Mishmush of the Tefillin and his Askus Nidus is required. He should never be disconnected with his Tefillin, always aware of his Tefillin. Shulchan Aruch Paskins Chayav Adam Lemashmish B'Tefillah of Kol Shah Shlo Yasiach Daitim. The Mashmish Shal Yad Tefillah Uksheyomer Ukshaytem Liyosal Yodecha Yemashmish B'Shal Yad Uksheyomer V'Hayil Tokos Be'inecha Yemashmish B'Shal Rosh. The Gemara Brachas on Daf Chav Gimel as an extension of what we learned about the Iser Hesech Hadas. Tan Rabbanan lo yochaz adam tefillin b'yadav v'sefer tov Yisrael v'yispalel v'lo yashnu b'mayim lo yisham b'hem lo shenas keva v'lo shenas haroy. The Brisa seems to prohibit sleeping in tefillin as an absolute all-inclusive Iser. However, we have another Gemara in Sukkah that seems to indicate that only a shenas keva is prohibited. One Brisa says Yashen Adam B'Tefillin shenas haroy, explicitly allowing shenas haroy in tefillin. Tanya Idach Bein keva bein haroy, all shena is prohibited. The Tanya Idach Lo keva v'lo haroy, that shena is not prohibited. Lo kasha. And the Gemara tries to organize these three brisos. Ha dinoket le biyade. If a person is, let's say, standing and holding his tefillin, and again, I don't know exactly how easy it is to sleep while you're standing, although I've tried it more than once, but he should not be sleeping at all, not even for a few moments, not even to take a short nap, because he might drop his tefillin. If, on the other hand, he's wearing it on his head, then we will permit a shenas haroy and prohibit a shenas keva. Hadipar sudrale. If, on the other hand, let's say he has his tefillin on the table and he puts it into an artik, some sort of a bag, then he's allowed to sleep, even a sleep that's keva, a real sleep. Kama shenas haroy, Tani bar Rami bar Yechezkel, Kidei Hiluch Mea Am. Rashi says, "The knockout lay biyade lo keva v'lo roy." All sleeping is prohibited. Sheva yiflu b'menu. He might drop his tefillin. Demanchi bereishe. If he's wearing his tefillin, then aroy is mutter. Keva is also. Why is keva also? Rashi tells us, "Shema yafiyah." This would be a violation, a desecration of kedushas tefillin if he lets air, passes air. However, paris sudrale, if let's say he's got it on the side of his head or wherever he keeps it, and he covers it over, it's kedushas tefillin, then bein keva bein haroy, he's allowed to sleep. We're not going to keep him awake just because he has tefillin in his proximity. Rishonim ask the following question. Even if you'll argue and convince me that if he takes a short nap, he'll be able to control his body, and we have no kshash hafocha. But nevertheless, what about the Iser Hesek Hadas? After all, during the few moments that he's napping, he's not aware of his tefillin. And the Rosh asks this question in Ilchus Tefillin, and he quotes from Ben Yonah. But Ben Yonah says, "Lo avi hesech hadas elo kisha omed bekalus rosh ubeschok." There's certain mental attitudes that are antithetical to the Kedusha's tefillin. And apparently when he's sleeping, he either does or may possibly have those thoughts and some sort of dreams that are antithetical to Kedusha's tefillin. But if he's just napping for a short period, probably we're talking about less than 5 minutes, then he will not have those kind of negative thoughts during his nap. So he could be working, he could be dealing with anything that he's dealing with, his profession, and he's not thinking about his tefillin. He's focused on whatever he's doing. That's not Hesek Hadas. Hesek Hadas means a negative kavana that's antithetical to Kedusha's tefillin. That's called Kalus Rosh Uschok. When he just takes a little nap, that's not called Hesek Hadas. He's not thinking about some sort of dream world, and it's not considered Kalus Rosh. Many Rishonim paskin like Rabbi Yonah, and they allow and permit shenas aroi while you're wearing tefillin. And we might add the following comment: you could encourage that perhaps for the following reason, because we want people, if possible, to wear tefillin longer rather than shorter. And it might mean that he has to take a little nap for some place. So we don't want him to take off his tefillin. But we're going to soon see that there's an opposite svara. In any event, the Ravid paskins that even shenas aroi is prohibited. And the Ravid is based, of course, on the Gemara in Brachas Daf Gimel that we started with, where the Gemara gives a flat, absolute prohibition of sleeping while you're wearing tefillin, without any exception. And perhaps the Ravid prefers that sugya over the sugya in Masechta Sukkah that we learned, because in Masechta Sukkah we also have a brisa that seems to prohibit a shenas aroi. Excuse me for just 1 minute. I'm alone here, so maybe there's. Now we have the Shita of the Rambam. The Rambam accepts the Gemara in Sukkah, and he says that shenas aroi and tefillin is mutter, but the Rambam is worried about the possibility that once he starts with a short nap, he might fall into a deep sleep. So the Rambam wants him to sleep in a way that he's so uncomfortable that he's going to snap out of it within minutes. Rambam has an example where he actually puts his head down below in between his knees. But again, I don't think you have to take this Rambam, only in that case. I think you can expand it to any case where you are only, in a very uncomfortable way. Like he puts his feet up, or he's sleeping in a place where there's like a hard, it's not a place which is conducive to sleep. And the Shulchan Aruch says that, like the Rambam, you have to guarantee yourself, if you're taking a nap while you're wearing tefillin, that you are sleeping in a position which is not conducive to falling into a deep sleep. And if you're following the pages, and again, thanks to David for sending them out, this is a kind of an experiment for us. We're up to page 121. Now, he says the following. The poskim, and we'll see the Piskei Tshuvos in just a minute, are not. Well, let's let's read the Piskei Teshuvos inside. Yeshlim with schus al elusha rosham nishmat al atzile yadeim the tnuma kal. So they sort of like put their heads down on their fingers, probably on the table, while they're wearing tefillin. And he says that even though they wear tefillin while they're sleeping, and maybe for a few minutes, we don't have to wake them up because it's clear that they haven't fallen into a deep sleep. If they fall into a deep sleep, then we have to wake them up in order to protect the Kedushas Tefillin. Now, he quotes the Mekubalim, but honestly, even without the Mekubalim, I would say the following, that there's no reason why we should encourage or even condone people who grab a nap while they're wearing a tefillin. Back in the day, when people were actually wearing tefillin the whole day, like my father says about his maternal grandfather, he doesn't remember him without tefillin, then you have to be more lenient and allow for a little nap here and there. But today, how long do we wear tefillin? For an hour? On a good day, maybe 45 minutes, or less than 30 minutes if you daven in the minyan. I used to daven in, okay, I shouldn't say this out loud, but perfect timing. In any event, today we should not be encouraging people to sleep with their tefillin on. And he says, if he did fall asleep, then the issue is whether he has to make a new brach on his tefillin when he wakes up. And the poskim say no. But if he takes off his tefillin for the purpose of sleeping, then he's going to have to make a new bracha, even if he had in mind that he will sleep for a short period of time and then put his tefillin back on. Basically, once you take off your tefillin, then the mitzvah tefillin has sort of terminated, and you need a new bracha every time you put on your tefillin again and again. Okay. Now we can skip to page 122. And we're going to talk about eating and drinking while you're wearing tefillin. And we're going to study the Gemara Brachos on Daf Lamed Hey. The Gemara says over Rav Yitzchak Hanichnas L'Sudas Keva. He's entering into a regular meal, a full-fledged meal. Choletz Tefillah. He takes off his tefillin, and then he enters into the meal. Gemara quotes a statement of Rabbi Chia that Meinichan al Shulchano, which sounds like he is not going to take off his tefillin and put it away, but he has his tefillin right there on the table. Now, at what point does he put his tefillin on? After he recites Birkas HaMazon and he completes his meal, then he's ready to put on his tefillin. Again, we'll have to ask whether he should make a second bracha if he made a bracha before he entered into the meal. But let's ask first the question, why is it that a person could not eat a regular meal while he's wearing tefillin? Rashi says, Shemesh Yishtaker B'Suda. Wow. We're worried about the fact that he might get intoxicated while he's eating. He is gana b'tefillah. I mean, this is like a real case of hesek hadas, if he will get drunk while he's eating a meal. And I think this is more relevant back in the day when every meal was eaten with wine on the table. It's a nice thing to put the tefillin on the table. Rashi asks why. Why is the Gemara advocating that when you start the meal, you have your tefillin on the table? Rashi says, in other words, immediately when he gets the first opportunity, the tefillin staring him in the face, he's going to put on his tefillin. So we see the following, that there's nothing in achila per se that's antithetical to tefillin. The problem is shikras, that he might be intoxicated. That's a bizayin to kedushas tefillin. Beis Yosef writes, Mashma dachilas keva dafka tzorach l'chaltzon avlo achilas aroi. The Gemara puts the emphasis on anichnas lisuda and also keva. If he's having a short snack, then we're not afraid he's going to get drunk. And there's no shemi yafiach by him, like we saw by Shena, where there's a chash that maybe if he falls into a deep sleep, he'll have thoughts that are antithetical to tefillin. But yet, we want to avoid achila of a sudas keva with tefillin, because that's the way the halacha is. Again, you're going to convince me there's nothing intoxicating on the table. But that's the way the halacha was formulated. And therefore, the Shulchan Aruch paskins are chaim simon mem anichnas lesudas keva cholton umenicham al shulchan ad zman habrocha v'chol umenicham. Aval achilas haroi ein tzarich lecholton. So he's allowed to eat a snack while he's wearing tefillin. And Rashi would say there's no chash of ishtaken. Mishabur writes, quoting the Sefer Shulchan Shlomo, "Estapek daf te'efshe zo dafka misha menichim kol hayom." As we said before, we want to be more lenient for someone who wears tefillin the whole day, so that he doesn't have to disturb the wearing of the tefillin, take off his tefillin. We want to encourage him to wear tefillin the whole day. And that's why we allowed for Shenas Aroi. And that's why we'll allow for a Sudas Aroi. Avalo Misha Darko, Lo Niach, Bishas Kriya Shema Tefillah, our minhag is we only leave the tefillin on for a short period of time while we are reading Kriya Shema and davening. And we shouldn't be so lenient about allowing achilas aroi. We should be more careful and avoid achila entirely. And this the Mishnah Berurah quotes in the name of the Shulchan Shlomo, which is very kind of odd that the Mishnah Berurah would want to be machmir with an achilas aroi. What's even achilas keva? I don't know why we have to take off that tefillin today when we don't drink any intoxicating beverages at our meal, or those who don't. I'm not talking about a kiddush in Toronto. I mean, I'm talking about just a little piece of mezainis, a little lekach, nothing major, no intoxicating beverages. And now to be machmir even on achilas aroi. And he says basically the following: you know what? We are concerned about kedushas tefillin. You're reciting Kriya Shema, you're davening, you take off your tefillin. If you're a chassid and you're on a very high level with piety, then okay, different story. We're going to encourage you to wear tefillin, and we will be more lenient in the case of a shenas aroi, in the case of achilas aroi. But the way we have at tefillin today, we are those who are not categorizing ourselves as chasidim, and we are fulfilling the basic mitzvah of tefillin while we daven and while we recite creation. Honestly, on a very personal, individual level, I don't relate to this the same way. It seems to me that the halacha should be reaching out to those who might be encouraged to wear tefillin for a longer period of time. We should not address ourselves to those who want to just put on the tefillin, do the basics, recite Kriyat Shema, say tefillah, and then get out and take off the tefillin. No. Let's not address ourselves to the lowest level, to the basic level. Let's address ourselves to the higher level, to encourage people to wear tefillin more and more and more. And even if it means being lenient, to allow them to have a little piece of something in their mouths so that they'll have cough to go on. And there's no pshash of Shem Yishtake. And Achil is not antithetical to Kedushas Tefillin. In any event, according to the strict letter of the law, Achilas Haroy is mutter. How much is Achilas Haroy? Says the Mishnah Berurah, I don't know, but it would seem to me that it's a kibetza. And he's borrowing here from the law of sukkah. You're allowed to eat an Achilas Haroy outside of the sukkah if it's less than a kibetza. We move on now to the Piskei Tshuvas, which you'll see on page 123. And I think the Piskei Tshuvas is in the spirit of what we were trying to argue here. Let's not be so machmir and envision that he's putting on his tefillin, doing the what's necessary, the basics, and then taking it off. Kavanasa Ritsuya. Let's address ourselves to someone who really is uplifted by the tefillin. He wants to wear it and be makadosh himself with every added minute that he's wearing tefillin. Is therefore Laman Yeshev b'tefillin, Odzman, the Tachnunim, he wants to pray to Hashem, believe in Torah, then let's be mekil. Let's allow him to drink, to eat, take a taste of something. And he says, Kach Nagu Gedol Yisrael. Talking about a person who immediately wants to take off his tefillin at the very first opportunity, that's a different halach. Then why should we give him any leniencies? And we're worried that he might come from Achilas Keva to Achilas Haroy, from Shenas Keva, Sheves Haroy to Shenas Keva. Let's just tell him not to fall asleep at all during tefillin, or to eat it all during tefillin. And perhaps there's an implicit musashmus here. When you tell a person he should be very careful and not sleep at all, not even nap a little, a power nap, and not to eat at all when he's wearing tefillin, that gives him a more serious and awesome appreciation of his tefillin. He realizes how sanctified the tefillin are and how much they sanctify the person who wears them. Now the question is as follows. I'm wearing my tefillin, time to eat my meal. They're serving me a very nice breakfast. Like last time I was in Clanton Park, those croissants there, that, one croissant you could bench Kedei Svi on. So I take off my tefillin, leave my tefillin on the table, and my intention is to put the tefillin back on after I finish my meal. And the Mishnah Berurah vacillates. Does he have to make a bracha when he puts his tefillin on after the meal? However, even though he vacillates in the Mishnah Berurah, in his Bir Halacha, he seems to come to a definite conclusion. Who wants to guess without looking inside if you haven't seen it yet? Should he be making the bracha or not making the bracha when he puts his tefillin back on after the Sudas Kevin? All in favor of making a bracha, put your thumbs up. Excellent. We have one person. And I think you're absolutely right. And and again, this is very atypical of the Mishnah Berurah. The Mishnah Berurah is the last one on the face of the earth to allow you to make a bracha when there's a suffix brachas. The Mishnah Berurah will tell you, how to take a piece of bread in your mouth and all the gymnastics. You know what I mean? But here, he introduces a concept called Dichui Mitzvah. Since you're not allowed to wear your tefillin while you're eating an achilas keva, it's Dichui Mitzvah. And when there's Dichui Mitzvah, it means that right now you're not allowed to perform that mitzvah, then that's a hefsek, and you require a brand new bracha for the new mitzvah. And we'll find similar concepts when he goes into the washroom and has to take off his tefillin, Beis HaMerchatz, Beis HaKisei, and so forth and so on. However, I just want to point out that even without Dichui Mitzvah, we still might have come to the same conclusion that he should make another bracha when he puts on his tefillin. Because as I indicated before, the bracha lasts as long as there's a Ma'aseh Mitzvah, as long as he's wearing the tefillin. Once he takes off the tefillin, then that mitzvah is gone. He's no longer wearing tefillin. Puts on tefillin, it's a brand new mitzvah. Why should he make a bracha? You'll ask me, but what about sukkah? I leave the sukkah and I intend to come right back. Take a short break. I don't make another bracha on my sukkah. I take off my talis to go into the washroom, hang it up on the thing, come out. I don't have to make another bracha on my talis. I wasn't Mesiach Das. It was just a temporary thing. So it would seem that the Mishnah Berurah and the Bir Halacha needs to rely on Dichui Mitzvah. But alternatively, I think we could say the following: that tefillin is different from all the other mitzvahs, because the mitzvah of tefillin is having the tefillin on your body. It's not just the Ma'aseh Nocha, but V'hayu, the Torah said. So in a case of a Ma'aseh Mitzvah, like for example, Ituf Hatalis, then you can make one bracha on multiple Ma'aseh Mitzvah. Like for example, Shechita. The Shochet will make one bracha and he'll shech many animals. And the same is true for B'dikas Chametz. If you have to be bodek different houses in a certain vicinity or proximity, one bracha suffices. And any time you do a Ma'aseh Mitzvah, and then you're going to follow up with another Ma'aseh Mitzvah and another Ma'aseh Mitzvah, one bracha suffices. But in the case of tefillin, where the mitzvah is having the tefillin on your body, once you take off the tefillin, you go back to square one. The mitzvah is gone. The Ma'aseh Hanocha in tefillin is only a machshir, a preparatory stage, in order to get the tefillin on your body, so that you wear the tefillin. All right, Kedushas HaTefillin Atzmo, on page 123. Number one, are you allowed to hang up your tefillin on a peg? Well, of course, we know that that's not allowed, but where do we know it from? It's a Gemara in Brachos on Daf Kov Daled. Omrav Chanina, Anira Isius Rebbe Shetola Tefillah, Meisvei Atola Tefillin Yitulo Chayav, Dorshei Chamuros Omru, V'hayu Chayecha Tluim Legnenecha, Pantocha, Atola Tefillin. Lokash. Haberitzua habektzitza. Iboisem v'loshna ritzua v'loshna ktzitza os. Chitola Rebbe bekista tola. So the Gemara, in justifying Rebbe, who is told his tefillin, offers two possibilities. One is that certainly Rebbe would have prohibited having your tefillin hang from the ritzuos, meaning you hang the ritzuos around the nail a peg, and the tefillin are suspended in midair. That's for sure a bizayin of Kedushas tefillin. But Rebbe allowed you to balance your tefillin, the bias of your tefillin, on some sort of a peg with the ritzuos hanging down. Because the batim that have a shin on them is guf kedusha. The ritzuos is only tashmisha kedusha. The second interpretation of Rebbe, and we'll see how the Shulchan Aruch paskins, is that even to hang up the tefillin in a way that the batim are on top and the ritzuos are on the bottom, Rebbe did not allow that. He only allowed you to put the tefillin into an artik, and you can hang up the artik. Because now the tefillin are behind the kisui, and it's not a bizayin to the tefillin. The Gemara says, that's pretty clear. I don't need Rebbe for that. My lemema, why are you making such a big deal about Rebbe's leniency? Maldetema, now we're on page 124. Tiboy anocha kesefer Torah kamash. Interesting. Are you allowed to put a Sefer Torah into a box? Like, for example, if you've seen the Sephardic Sefer Torah, and then attach the box to a wall, and the Sefer Torah is inside a box, suspended in midair? The answer is no. That's not allowed. You have two choices. Either you put the Sefer Torah down on the ground, let's say in the Aron Kodesh, or you put it on a stand so it has raglayim, but it's not hanging in midair attached to the wall. But in Tefillin, that's permissible. So we see here clearly that the Kedusha of Sefer Torah exceeds beyond that of Tefillin. And therefore, the Isa Zilzal or Bizayon in Sefer Torah is much more chamur than Tefillin. Tefillin is something we wear on our body. We try to be careful about a gufnaki, but it's a levush. It's something that we wear. It's part of us. Sefer Torah is a whole different story. And there is a minhag to fast even if tefillin fell on the ground, but that's a pious chumrah. With Sefer Torah, chas v'shalom, falls. It's very serious business. Shulchan Aruch paskins also litlos tefillin bein bebatim bein beritzuos. The Shulchan Aruch is machmir in favor of protecting Kedushas Tefillin and only accepts the second interpretation of Rebbe, that you're allowed to hang up your Tefillin if they're already in the Tefillin zekel, in the bag. Now, if you look at number 20, the Mishnah Berurah says Sefer Torah also liklosa. I don't know why he calls it nekeva, but anyway, bechol gavni afilu kshi bi aron kodesh v'toleh ha'aron hakodesh. He's going even a step further, says the Mishnah Berurah. The Sefer Torah is inside the aron, and it's on the ground of the aron. It's not in any way suspended in the air, but the aron itself is suspended in the air. That's awesome. So it's critical that the Aron Kodesh itself be either attached to the ground or have legs that attach it to the ground. And now the Mishnah Berurah says something which I never understood, if anyone could explain this to me. Sifrei Talmud, Doma L'Tefillin. Sifrei Talmud, Doma L'Tefillin. Why is that so? I mean, maybe if it's handwritten on cloth, maybe as Kedusha Sefer. But our Sifrei Talmud, manufactured, mass-produced, published, photocopied, I don't know, whatever you call it, it's certainly not written b'klaf u'b'yo u'l'shem Kedusha. I don't know. But he allows you to write psukim on a piece of paper, and then you can take that piece of paper and attach it to the wall, let it hang. That doesn't have the same status as Sifrei Talmud. Noagim ha'olam lis'anos k'shenofel tefillin miyad ala aretz below nartikon. I was unaware of this minhag. Pious people will fast, but that mitzad minhag we have to fast because the tefillin fell on the floor. Vuadin k'shenofel sefer Torah. Okay, that's something else. Now, notice the difference between tefillin and sefer Torah. In tefillin, it's not inside a narrative. That's why you fast when it falls on the ground. In the sefer Torah, even if it's inside the mantle, if it falls, we fast. And if the tefillin fell in the nartik, then he quotes the Sefer Eliyahu Rabbah to the effect that he should give some money to the stock. Halach l'maisa, do we actually fast? Well, he doesn't tell you who he's quoting here, but apparently he's quoting some contemporary achronim who say that today fasting is too much for us and therefore we just give kesef. In any event, the point of our discussion here is that tefillin has a common denominator with Sefer Torah, and there's an iser of zilzul b'tefillin, and perhaps a chiyuv of tinus when the tefillin fall on the ground. And this is all to instill in our hearts an awe of the tefillin and their kedusha. Somebody puts his tefillin on the seat. Are you allowed to sit down on the same bench? And he says, "Bizayin atfilin yitochen lorak be'ofen hanachasam o betliyasam elegam b'makom bohem usanos." We have to be very careful about the tefillin, not only where you hang them up and how you hang them up, how you put them on and how you take them off, but also even in a place where they are kept. That's where you keep your tefillin. Don't sit on that place. Don't sit on that bench. I can't tell you halach l'maisa because I've seen many people are lenient about this. In some shuls, most shuls, I would say today, have individual seats. You know, I don't sit on your bench and you're not sharing me with my bench, so this problem would not arise. But there are many shuls that have benches. And people put that tefillin on the bench. However, again, don't rely on me, but Lefiani is daiti, that's only the tefillin themselves. If the tefillin are in a nartik, and we were matir tliya, and we said you don't fast if the tefillin and the nartik fall on the ground, then I would say that according to strict letter of the law, you'd be allowed to sit on the bench that has tefillin on it, as long as the tefillin are in the zekel. And now we take a look at a Gemara Brachos on the bottom of page 124. Rav Yosef asked Rav Nechunya I'm sorry, Rav Yehuda, the following question. Mao yaniach adam tefillah tachas mirashosa. I understand, says Rav Yosef, that to put your tefillin underneath your legs, your feet, that would be a bizayin for tefillah. But what about underneath your head? Ki kami boile tachas mirashosa mai. Omalei, he responded to him. Hachi amar Shmuel mutter. Afilu ishto imo. Whoa. He's lying in bed with his wife and he's putting his tefillin behind his head. Meisved, how could that be? Lo yaniach adam tefillah tachas margiloso, they should augment their bizayin. Meinicha tachas merashoso, but im hoisa ishto imo os. So this brisa contradicts the other brisa and takes a middle of the road approach. Yes, it's permissible. It's not a bizayin to tefillin to put the tefillin under your head, as it is to put them under your feet, but not if you're with your wife. But hayamakom shegavah shloshet tfachim o namach shloshet tfachim mutar. If the tefillin are 3 tfachim above where he's sleeping, or 3 tfachim below where he's sleeping, then it's mutar. So you would draw a straight line where his head is. We'll call it a horizontal line, and you can put the tefillin 3 tfachim below that line or 3 tfachim above that line. Tiyufta d'shmuel, tiyufta marava, afal gav, the tanya tiyufta d'shmuel, alocha kavase my taima. Colon and ture, on. What does this mean? We're going to paskin like Shmuel. So Rashi says, colon el turinu tfei adiflu mi bizyoni. Why is he putting his tefillin behind his head, below his head? What kind of behavior is that? That's called covered tefillin. So the answer is he's doing it for shmiras hatefillin. This is the best place to protect the tefillin that they shouldn't fall on the ground. Again, he might have preferred putting it under his legs, but that's a bizayin to tefillin. But the level of bizayin under his head is not the same. And the shmiras tefillin trumps that level, minimal level of bizayin of putting the tefillin below his head. The kamashu muzar al shmiraso tfei adif l'mi bizyone. Put the bizyone on the side and advocate in favor of shmira. Rashi says min akbarim. You know, they lived in a society where akbarim were, living there and they were eating away and stuff and so on. I mean, the Gemara talks in Erevin about tefillin on Shabbos that were left outside, or whether you're allowed to wear them and bring them in, and so forth and so on, because of the Akbarim or because of the Ganovim. People actually steal tefillin. Now, at least I thought my tefillin was stolen, but somebody found them and returned them to me. Another time I lost my tefillin and they were not returned to me. I don't know if you ever had that experience. And therefore the Shulchan Aruch paskins lanichon b'mita keneged sido ketachas magil yosef. He puts his tefillin on the bed, right next to his body. That's not a way of protecting your tefillin. That's already like Margil Yosef. It's already comes under bizayin tefillin. Not only that, if he puts his tefillin next to his body when he goes to sleep at night, he might roll over and end up on top of his tefillin. That's a bizayin. And the Mishnah Berurah says, Safsolim shebebeis hakneses, shetachas hasafsolim, yesh teva laniach shom talsu tefillin. Are we allowed to have a little box, like a closet, a mini closet, underneath the chair in the synagogue where we can hide that tefillin? No one ever was bothered by that. The Mishnah Berurah is bothered by that. That's not a way of treating tefillin. Basically, you're sitting on top of the tefillin, just you have one little hefset. Yesh over diosel leishev asafsolim. We're not going to allow you to sit on a safsol below the safsol is tefillin. Yesh matir. Mishnah Berurah is not willing to take a stand on this. Again, it's a matter of shmiras tefillin. Yeah, you'll tell me he can take his tefillin home. Why does he have to leave it in shul? That's not a kasha. He wants to make sure he doesn't forget his tefillin. It's accessible to him, but he has to protect the tefillin. He can't leave it on hefker. It'll get stolen. Or the akbar will get to it. So he puts it in this little closed area, closet, below the seat of his chair. Yesh mati. Comes along the Mishnah Berurah with a brilliant insight. Ingenious. We have halacha in Tumas Mes of Tuma Bokas v'Olad l'Rakia, which means the following: that if the Tuma, let's say the mess is completely closed, like in the case of Kvura, and whenever I see a Kvura, I say, let the man breathe. Okay, but I guess he's not breathing that much. So now he's got Tuma Ritzutza. There's no airspace that will allow the containment of that Tuma. So the Tuma just shoots up ad l'Rakia. Whole shaila about taking a plane, if you're a Kohen, and it goes over cemeteries, because the Tuma Ritzutza. I once sat next to a Kohen on an El Al plane. He put his body into a sack for the entire trip, 11 hours from Newark, New Jersey. Says the Mishnah Berurah, but we have halacha poseach tefach. If there's an airspace of a tefach, it contains the tumah, and it doesn't pokei al l'rakia. Says the Mishnah Berurah, I'm going to apply the same halacha brilliantly to tefillin. He's got the tefillin in a box, in a little mini closet below his seat. But there's airspace inside the closet. And therefore, he says, the yesh halal tefach, if there's a height of a tefach, let's call it 6 inches of airspace, panui, there's nothing in that airspace, mutter, you're allowed to sit on the safsal. Now, I'm afraid to read the next line because I think we got to the point here where Kolamosif Goreha, I'd be very happy to stop right here and build my synagogues in a way that there's room under the seat for tefillin, because there's a tefach panui on top of the airspace on top of the tefillin. But unfortunately, the Mishnah Berurah, for me anyway, the Mishnah Berurah says, "Ubal nefesh roilo lahachmir shalom mokavatchak gam bozeki tefillin yesh nizar b'kedusha." As we said before, over and over again, we're seeing the poskim being more and more machmir on tefillin, almost as a matter of mussar, as a matter of an educational methodology to instill the fear of tefillin in the hearts of man. The reverence that we have to have for tefillin, because its kedusha is greater than that of its tzitz. Tzitz, as we said, has 1 shame, and the tefillin 42 shame. And we saw it over and over again. The halacha is that you're allowed to sleep a shenas keva with tefillin. No, avoid it. You're allowed to eat achilas keva. Achilas aroy. You're allowed to sleep a shenas aroy. Avoid it. Achilas aroy. Avoid it. Technically, according to Rebbe, in one opinion at least, you're allowed to put the bottom of your tefillin on top of a peg to hang them up. No, we're going to take the second transmission of Rebbe, that he would only allow it if he was hanging up an artik. We're going to be machmir, and if the tefillin fall on the ground, we want you to fast. 2 weeks, give it stuff. And we're comparing tefillin to Sefer Torah. Rashi says, if you sleep in tefillin, Shem yafiach behem. You eat in tefillin, Shem yishtaker behem. Maybe you'll get drunk. All these are chumras because we're trying to instill the fear of tefillin in our hearts. The Rambam writes that a person should wear tefillin the whole day because of the kedushas tefillin. It's so great. And the Mechaber Paskins chayv lemashmesh b'tefillin b'kol shah. Not to be Mesiach Das. So great and awesome is the kedushas tefillin. Does this apply to the Shalyad as well as the Shal Rosh? It seems from the Rambam that it does. Shal Rosh has a great kedusha. And if we're talking about Poseach Pesach, of Halal Tefach, what about this new invention? I don't know if you've seen it there in Toronto, here, in the Israeli army, it's very popular. They have these nartikim where they put the tefillin shal yad on top of the tefillin shal rosh. Should we require a tefach to separate the shal rosh from the shal yad on top of it? Because the shal rosh has a greater kedusha. And I think there are many answers to this question. Number one, he's putting the shal yad on the shal rosh. He's not sitting on the shal rosh. Number two, there's a hefsek between the shal yad and the shal rosh. They're in two separate compartments. Osir leishe b'shaveh al safsol echad sheminochem b'tefillin. Shem sha'osir b'sifrei kodesh. El ken yaniach tefillin tachas ha-tefillin is a dover mafsik she'eno kelyon. Guess what? We don't want to sit on the same bench as tefillin unless he puts something that separates the tefillin from the bench that's Eino Kelyon. Takes a towel, something that's not the kli that is designated for the tefillin. So therefore the nartik shel tefillin would not be a valid hefsek, a mafsek. But what about the talis zekel? What do you say, Rabbosai? Is the talis zekel called kelyon because it protects not only the talis, but the tefillin zekel and the tefillin inside the tefillin zekel as well? So, for example, would you allow someone to take a talis zekel, which has a tefillin zekel inside of it, into a beis hashimush? You're going to tell me it's not kelyon? I don't know. I'm not the biggest machmir, but we see here in tefillin everybody's being machmir. Why not join the bandwagon? I wouldn't be machmir if I wanted to encourage someone to wear tefillin hours and hours during the day. But to go into a bathroom because you're saying it's inside a keli that's not kelyon because it's inside the talis zekel, when you always, on a daily basis, you keep your tefillin zekel inside the talis zekel, I would call that kelyon. Okay. Let me just see how we're doing on the clock. Maybe we have time for one more paragraph here. Now this is really complicated. I just want to see. Do you have page 129? If you don't, then we'll have Torsh Bal Peh. And today was the first experiment for us of learning a sefer called Tzurba MiRabanan. And I'm hoping that you like this sefer because it's very well organized. You start with the Gemara and you quote the Rashi and other Rishonim, and then you get to the Shulchan Aruch, and then you get to the Ramah and the Mishnah Berurah and the Piskei Halachos, Piskei Tshuvos. It's a nice piece of work. And not only that, but at the end of each chapter, he has a sikum, a summary. He says, Kiddushas Adam, Sheminichem, Shemunachas Ol Tefillin, Shelo Yafiach Behem, Shelo Yisha Behem. The Rambam says, Ein Mahar B'machshavas Ros. Shulchan Aruch says, Chayev L'mashmish B'tefillin Kol Shah, Shelo Yasiach Taito Mehem. The Rosh says that Shenas Haroy in Tefillin is mutter, Ein Behem Kalos Rosh. The Shulchan Aruch paskins that you have to guarantee that you won't fall into a deep sleep, put your head between your knees. And the Piskei Teshuvah says that the Mekubalim just completely discourage any sort of sleeping or napping, even for a short amount of seconds while you're wearing your tefillin. You're entering into a Sudas Keva, you take off your tefillin. Achil Saroy, technically, you don't have to take off your tefillin. Mishnah Berurah says that for those who just put on the tefillin for Kriyat Shema and Tefillah, ein lechel b'hem klal, no achilu whatsoever should be permissible. You're not allowed to hang up your tefillin, and we're going to paskin you can't hang up your tefillin, whether it's b'batim or b'ritzuos, it doesn't matter, but mutar l'tlosam b'kisan, and the Mishnah Berurah says that our minhag is to fast when tefillin fall like a Sefer Torah, but that's only if they fell without a nartik. And even if they fell inside the nartik, the minhag is to give tzedakah. Shulchan Aruch paskins that you're not allowed to put your tefillin in your bed under your head. And the Mishnah Berurah goes on and says you're not allowed to sit on a safsol if they're tefillin that are sitting on the safsol. Okay then, so that's where we're going to stop for today. A basic summary of what we covered today. And I'll take this opportunity to wish you all a great week. Let me know some feedback if this is a good way of continuing our study of Halakha.